Thanks. I always wanted to try this one.
Hi, Kyle. I'm fine.
Raycom, download the free app now. Stream on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to CBS News. It is Thursday, June 9th, 2022. Here's a quick recap of some of the big stories that we are following for you this morning. The January 6th committee said that it plans to honor new material at tonight's first primetime hearing. It comes after nearly a year of investigation. Around 1,000 officer proceedings will get underway at 8 p.m. Eastern at the Constituent Library here in CBS.
Elsewhere on Capitol Hill, the House is set to vote today on red flag laws, much like the gun control bill that passed in June last night. This measure is not expected to advance in the Senate. Bipartisan talks between senators are continuing, though, on compromise legislation.
And Americans are facing yet another day of record gas prices. Say with me, record gas price. Every day it's the exact same thing. Unfortunately, the national average for a gallon of regular gas is now $4.97. That is up more than 60 cents from a month ago. In many states, the average price though has surpassed $5 per gallon.
A seemingly endless story of mass shootings in the United States has left many sadly, tragically, in some cases, no. In a recent opinion piece for the Washington Post, the Paul Weiss law firm Jay Johnson says sharing graphic images of the victims will awaken the public and give Americans a much-needed evidence. Now to talk more about this, what some are calling controversial. Mr. Secretary, thanks so much for being with us.
They want you to work for them.
Thanks for having me. So for people who may not understand what you mean by an Evansville moment, can you explain that? And just like that Evansville moment back in the 1950s had an awakening about the struggles that Black people in this country were facing, the trauma that they were facing, what kind of impact you think it might have on lawmakers and the American people?
Earlier this year, through a partnership with
First of all, I was
Where the hell is it? I didn't find my picture sideways.
it is something that's been on my mind since Sandy Hook 10 years ago. I'm being surprised
They
when I
put
say
it
we need an Emmett Till moment. The number of Americans of different generations, white and black, seem to know exactly what I mean. For those of you who do not, Emmett Till in 1955 was a 14-year-old boy from Chicago. He was visiting family for the summer in Mississippi, and he supposedly made a sassy remark to a white woman in a general store in Mississippi. And within a day, he was murdered, beaten, shot in the head, lynched by two men who were later acquitted by an all-white Mississippi jury. Emmett Till's mother decided to have an open casket funeral, and therefore Americans saw vivid images of her son, her 14-year-old son, dressed in a suit in his casket, but with a bloated, mutilated face and cranium. Those images were projected literally all over the world. Time magazine called that image one of the 100 most influential images of all time. Many historians believe that it sparked the civil rights movement. The Montgomery bus boycott began just 3 months later. I know from my experience, and those of you in media know, that images often convey things that words simply cannot. I believe in the current environment where we see mass shootings over and over and over again, we need a game changer. I believe that Americans need to be brought closer to the horror of this tragedy. I'm reluctant to say to a parent of a dead child, you should display images of your dead child. I don't have the moral standing to do that. I do know this, however. Young children who were present in Robb Elementary School have been eyewitness to this murder, to this tragedy, of their classmates, of their teachers, and will be in grief counseling likely for the rest of their life as a result. Why should those innocent 10-year-olds be eyewitnesses to this, live with this? But lawmakers who, through their inaction, continue to allow this to happen, why are they spared? And why are the constituents who elected them spared from seeing this up close and personal? I do not advocate for the disclosure of any specific image, but I do believe that Americans need to see a much more vivid picture of what an assault weapon can do to a child's body.
Mr. Johnson, when you said that about an Emmett Till moment, the photo that actually came to mind for me was the photo that many people will call Napalm Girl from Vietnam, right? 9-year-old running, skin burning, terrified. And, for Americans, it was, and it's actually called the terror war. So for Americans, it was jarring, right? And for her, and she's still alive today, the photo haunted her. And I just wondered, but that was back then, and those sort of images were not so readily available. So now we're living in a time where there are images of violence that are available, because of the internet, these images can be used and abused, turned into misrepresented, turned into misinformation. And I thought to myself, could something like that do more harm than good?
Well, first of all, the so-called Napalm Girl, and I apologize, I don't remember her real name, actually wrote an op-ed herself in the New York Times that essentially advocates for the same thing that I did. You're right, she's alive today, she lives in Canada. And let's think about a much more contemporary image. The image of Derek Chauvin with his knee on George Floyd's neck. Imagine where we would be had someone with an iPhone not been standing on that street corner. Recall that the initial police report was suspect dies, had a medical condition, right? Had we not seen that image, that police report probably would have been it. And there would have been various eyewitnesses accounts, but no video, no rapid image for Americans to see. And as you know, that incident displayed vividly in video sparked Black Lives Matter and everything that followed.
Mr. Secretary, you will listen to those hearings on Capitol Hill yesterday, and you did have a pediatrician who was from Uvalde, Texas, who then described seeing the bodies of 2 small children who've been decapitated, mutilated by the bullets of an AR-15. When you realize that parents of these children who were murdered could only identify their children, or their children could only be identified by using DNA swabs taken from their mouths. That was the only way that they were able to identify these children. The doctor described them as being pulverized. So now let's talk about what the families or the families of others killed in mass shootings would want, if they would want those images shared with the world. I know that Mamie Till, we go back to the example of Emmett Till, it was Mamie Till, Emmett's mother, who made that decision herself. And there were others who said, you probably shouldn't do this. And she wanted the world to see this. I'm curious what you think about the families who might or might not want. And again, obviously it would be up to the individual families. But to Anne Marie's point, you could certainly see a world where there are people, Mr. Secretary, as you know, who believe that we faked the moon landing and who believe that the January 6th insurrection was caused by Antifa. Anything is possible in this fractured media world that we live in now.
First of all, that kind of absurd extreme thinking should not hijack our own thinking about the best way to approach this problem. Second, I would fully respect and support a decision by a parent. Showing the images of my dead child is too much for me to bear. I would fully support that and respect that. I do believe, however, that we need to see more closely what this tragedy looks like. If there were a criminal trial, a prosecution of the shooter, the shooter's dead, but if there had been a prosecution of the shooter, the prosecution would need to show very graphic images of the crime scene. The shooter's dead. So there will be no such photographs at a criminal trial. But we do need, I believe, through one image or another, to convey, because images very often, most often, convey things that words cannot. The heart-wrenching description from the pediatrician, the congressional testimony,
Prosecuting attorney,
describes
he
in
has
great specificity
license.
the harm that an assault weapon can do to a child's
Mayor
body.
does, he has a.
But images convey far more. So I am convinced that if we, as Americans, as lawmakers in Congress, saw more rapidly the tragedy that these mass shootings cause, it would mobilize public opinion, it would galvanize action, and it would probably alter the course of history in this country.
You sort of spoke to a point that Bob and I were talking about, because I thought to myself, if you're not moved by the description of that pediatrician, like if that's not enough for you, then I don't think anything else will move you. But you point out that a picture is so much more powerful. Secretary, before we let you go, I just want to ask you a quick question about the Summit of the Americas that's happening now in Los Angeles. The Biden administration has made quite a show of its efforts to root out the root causes of migration. The vice president is sort of in charge of that. Sometimes I wonder if the administration has actually rolled out concrete policies that will actually slow the flow of migration. We already know that there's a caravan heading to the border right now. And of course, there are numerous other issues to discuss, but I just wanted to get your take on the summit, whether or not you think that any concrete deliverables will come out of it, and if not, is it worth it?
You cannot solve this problem, and I owned this problem for 3 years when I was Secretary of Homeland Security. Immigration, border security, it's a tough issue, it's a tough issue, but you can't solve this problem on our southern border without the active participation and cooperation of the governments of Mexico and the governments of Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. I'm disappointed that the president of Mexico will not be at the summit. Mexico was vital to our efforts to address the spike that occurred in early summer 2014. Bigger picture, the lesson I learned, and I know President Biden believes this because when he was vice president, we discussed this. Big picture, you can put a lot of defenses on our southern border. You can enhance enforcement. You can do lots of things, but as long as the underlying conditions exist in Central America, the push factors, as long as the poverty, the corruption exists that are causing families to make the judgment of in the first place, we're going to continue to deal with this problem. You've got to address this problem at the source. Through aid, I believe we can do it, and I know President Biden believes the same thing.
Jay Johnson, thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you.
So coming up, our medical contributor, Dr. David Agus, is back to answer your COVID questions. We're going to cover everything from vaccines for young kids to whether you should feel safe going to concerts this summer. We'll be right back.
Every day, what's that ranch on it? Oh, it's got ranch on it. Those things, the drifts
As it pertains,
we have the meat.
The only way you're ever gonna know what you're made of is by heading into the big, wild, raging, so damn beautiful across world and finding out for yourself. The new Grand Cherokee, made for what you're made of.
Ready, sous chef? Using fresh, quality ingredients can make or break your dish. With HelloFresh, they always deliver, literally, to your doorstep. I love this dish. It's got more layers than a Canadian ski coat. You won't find these in any old grocery store. Don't forget to add some of that TLC. Want to learn how I just did that? HelloFresh. It's fast, it's fresh, and it's the ultimate summer shortcut.
Go to HelloFresh.com and use code EAT16 for 16 free meals plus 3 free gifts.
What are you gonna do? Here! Grab onto me! We can double up! No, don't worry about it, I'm good! I don't want to detract from your experience! Just give me your hand! No, don't sweat! Probably just a bouncing thing! The harness is great though, stop!
Sometimes you just need some help. So if you need therapy, find a licensed therapist at BetterHelp.com.
Teaching her how to drive. But Dad, why not use Greenlight to help her save for her own car?
Mowing lawns, getting paid.
Oh, smoothies. Is that strawberry? Soon, she'll go from washing your car to
to flexing with her own. Even better, teach her how to invest in cars. Together, you can navigate the world of earning, saving, and investing. Because when you teach her how to be smart about money, she'll go far, real far. Invest in your best investment. Green light.
I love Made-In. I love what Made-In represents. With the product, you can tell that there's extreme craftsmanship.
You would think a pan is a pan until Made-In came along. And like, wow, these things are something better.
I use Made-In both at home and here at Craft in New York City. They're beautifully made and will help you take your cooking to the next level.
Those are the pans that we use at Alinea. We're going to have the best pans in the world at one of the best restaurants in the world.
Queen Elizabeth is beloved around the world, just as Sir Paul McCartney. She was like
I like that.
Her Majesty the Queen at Gail King Special, now streaming.
Lucians.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness. We found it. We share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
The Uplift. Stream on the free CBS News app. The Inspiration. An 11-month investigation. What you haven't seen. The January 6th hearings begin. Watch CBS News Live tonight.
This upcoming segment is presented by Steel. Find yours at steeldealers.com.
Our series, Rebuilding America, showcases people and communities that are finding creative ways to build a better world one project at a time. Today, we introduce you to a San Francisco couple spreading flower power. Yeah,
I like that's like a bit of power.
a term from the 60s. On their first date, they planted an aloe bush.
Yeah, it's not a flower, but it's okay.
Yeah, it's a bush. That seed which inspired a project to plant native wildflowers in empty lots across their city. Lily and Luciano got arrested in so-called guerrilla gardening, which benefits both nature and us.
With pink water guns adapted for seed dispersal.
Oh, wow. This is us.
Behold my street art.
It is like street art. We met up with Shalico and Phoenix McGee, who've been leaving their colorful mark on the streets of San Francisco for the last decade. This is so beautiful.
This is what happens when the entire seed pack goes to blue.
There's so many colors. It looks like my outfit. Shalico, who runs a production studio, and Phoenix, a landscape contractor, are seeding a little joy, one plant at a time.
These are fun.
The self-professed guerrilla gardeners plant native wildflowers in forgotten spaces, streets, in vacant lots, even the grounds of the local police station. These are beautiful. They're so high.
They're popping up.
You bring your shaker like this and the cows don't say anything?
They say thanks for the flowers.
Aww. What is guerrilla gardening?
We plant native pollinator seeds in neglected areas of land, and it's just a nice way to make a forgotten about space, full of flowers. Then you can see the pollinators all flying around in here.
Supporting pollinators, of course, is beneficial for farming, but on the streets of this concrete jungle, the thrill of a successful seed bombing is real.
I think people think it's like fun and like rebellious, and it's getting them excited about planting.
With 250,000 followers on TikTok and over 5 million likes,
And look at the different seeds in there.
we've discovered a whole bunch of passionate planters on social media. And it turns out sowing these flowers is good for the soul.
We take a break from our computers and we take a walk at sunset, and we sow native seeds on our walks. We'll forget that we sowed a place up with seeds, and then we'll turn a corner 3 months later, and all of a sudden you'll see all of the plants.
California and then a hyper native Bay Area mix.
Now Care is all about spreading the gospel of the seeds. What's been the most rewarding for you?
We're speaking at schools and universities, and we met with this troop of Girl Scouts
And then the shaker.
and taught them about native wildflowers. They dressed up as bees, and we taught them about pollinators and just the benefits of that. It's just introducing the next generation to this, and sort of getting them in touch with nature.
They were so excited. We gave them all little shakers, and then they were running around with the shakers and just as seeds. It was really beautiful.
It all stems from their desire to brighten up the city and bring smiles to their neighbors' faces. Do you guys still get very excited every time I do this?
Every time. It never gets old.
What's it feel like to walk by and see this?
There's always something that we've planted blooming. So it's just kind of heartwarming. I feel like you can feel it. People call it our magic trick. It's nature's magic trick. We're just helping it along.
I'm Lidia Luciano in San Francisco.
For all the times you've been inspired to be just like that. Find the gift you'll love to use. Visit our Father's Day gift guide.
You know what to say.
Revenue's revenue. That's what I'm here to
Where's
teach
your
you.
mom?
Many efficiencies have no place on a winning team because it's revenue growth. We're all growing. That remains undefeated.
A small red circle. Or is it big? Is it the sun? Or an electron moving at 1,000+ miles per second? One thing we do know, this mystery circle holds ancient powers of subatomic supersonifications that humanity has only begun to fathom. And you will find all of these powers hiding in plain sight in the cranberry. My life used to be so calm and fun until one day, where'd the fun go? The cars, they will guide me home. You might think you know how to play Solitaire, but Solitaire Grand Harvest takes challenges to the next level with exciting ways to play. It'll keep you sharp, and it's even better than ordinary Solitaire. So, at the end of the day, when you want to unwind, play Solitaire Grand Harvest and explore a new world of Solitaire. Download for free.
Money is flat. That's why Boost Mobile finds ways to help you keep more relevant. To spend on what you really want. Get 3 unlimited data lines for $30 a month each and a free Samsung Galaxy A32 5G when you switch to West. Call that for now. Feel the power of keeping more money in your pocket with 3 unlimited lines for $30 a month each on America's largest 5G networks. More power to save. Boost Mobile.
Go to the ends of the earth right now to get something crazy. And reach for the stars.
Here we are. Yes, it's my comeback.
This is pretty fun.
There's more. Experience thought-provoking, innovative, and truly original reporting. Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
Alright, people from every corner of America
10 hours.
facing challenges.
Everyone just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to I Am America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
We have an inspiring story that started with a straight action. We found it. We found the share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
The Uplift. Stream on the free CBS News app.
Moderna says that its new COVID vaccine offers better protection against the Omicron variant.
Wow.
Company tested a booster shot that combines its original vaccine with one specifically targeting Omicron. Data from those trials are being sent to the FDA for review. And the new vaccine in development and under consideration for approval, we know you have, rather with this, we know you have questions. So Dr. David Agus is joining us now with the answers that you need. Hey, doctor. So this new vaccine from Novavax is going to be approved. It's very interesting because for people who are uncomfortable with the science behind the mRNA, they may find themselves more comfortable with this vaccine. Can you tell us more about it?
Yeah, so it's about subunit vaccine, which is like the hepatitis vaccine that we were used to. So something that we used for a long time in the United States. The data show that 90% protection from serious illness. So it's a very good vaccine. There's been historically some production problems. So assuming they get over production, the FDA gives a go ahead and say, hey, you can produce it. It's going to be rolled out and it will be a effective adjunct to the current vaccines we have. I still think we have so much safety data with the RNA vaccines and more data against Omicron. For this Novavax wasn't tested against Omicron. I'm still a fan right now of the RNA vaccines.
All right, this mother wants to know if it is safe to fly with her 3-year-old. Her husband doesn't think so. He's concerned about the child getting COVID.
Yeah, this is a question that we get all the time, and it really depends on your level of risk tolerance. And I think that's key, right? We're all different in how much risk we can tolerate. Obviously, we're going to have a vaccine for 6 months to 5 years in the next week or so. States have placed the orders in, both Pfizer and Moderna, and they are excellent vaccines. But now, if you want to find there is some risk, but it's very minimal. The key thing is, right, is that if you're going to sit around with 3 people, if you and your child, you sit in that little seat, you're vaccinated, try to put your child on the end. Wear the mask. I still wear masks on planes. I'm in the minority, but I still use protection. I wear KN95 masks. So if you have some risk tolerance, I do think it's safe, but we all have to live.
You don't even charge me.
We can do now thanks to science.
This
Not
mother
supposed
is
to charge
12-year-old,
you for my
tested
land either.
positive for COVID, 12 days
Rest
after
assured.
being a booster. She's asymptomatic, the rest of the family all tested negative too. Mom wants to know when can her daughter come back to work.
It depends on how much she likes the daughter. You can use the quarantine excuse to
No, he
keep
didn't
the daughter on the side of the house. What we say is that 2 days after full resolution of symptoms, in this case, there's no symptoms. So if by day 5 she continues to have no symptoms, she should be able to test out of quarantine, or we have 2 tests on the road, antigen tests at home.
That guy
And
didn't
they're
ready
so easy to get now. That's the route I would favor. Just try to get some tests at home.
He just thinks like, well, you're
All right,
white.
and here's something, because I'm a doctor, Stan wrote, and I quote, I have tickets to a bunch of outdoor concerts this summer. Am I being a complete idiot by going? And this is a question.
And rest assured, he doesn't pay me.
That's true. I mean, actually, when the summer was gonna go to Guns N' Roses, yes, with Rob Black. And I chose not to go because I knew that my parents were coming to visit, and my dad is a compromised, and I just didn't want to risk it. Being outdoors, being but it's outdoors, outdoors, in an open concert. So Doctor, what do you think?
Yeah, so
No, he's not giving them money. It's just
again,
experience.
it's all this tolerance. When the guy is coming in to press, it's probably not a good idea to go in the 4 or 5 days prior to him coming. But that being said, I do think
Lights out.
outdoor venues are a lot safer than indoor venues. And again, you can wear a mask and you can situate yourself kind of unauthentically on the edge and reduce risk not to zero but to a lower level. If we're vaccinated and we're boosted, even if we're exposed and we have Paxlovid as a backdrop, I mean, I think we're gonna be okay. We have to now learn to live with the virus. I keep saying that, but it's true. But there are gonna be those exceptions like your father.
Wherever the conference.
All right, Dr. David Agus, my friend, thank you very much as always. We appreciate it. We'll be right back.
This is the moment for a brand new treatment.
There's no need it. The guy that put the water in it.
Now FDA approved, 100% steroid free, not an injection. Sabinco is a once daily pill for kids who didn't respond to previous treatments, and Sabinco provides clear skin and no relief itch. Sabinco can lower your ability to fight infections, including TB. Before and during treatment, your doctor should check for infections and do blood tests. Tell your doctor if you've had hepatitis B or C, have flu-like symptoms, or are prone to infections. Do not take medicines that prevent blood clots, serious, sometimes fatal infections, lymphoma, lung, skin, and other cancers. Serious heart events and blood clots can happen. People 50 and older with heart disease risk factors have an increased risk of serious heart-related events or death with JAK inhibitors. This is the moment that has only just begun. A new innovation from Pfizer.
The guy's like, well, we're going to pay if things come through for us. Hey, Mr. I'm not supposed to operate like that. Problem is, I'm just supposed to run.
Car and home insurance rates will go up.
Hey, what about my bonding rate?
Pay more than you need to.
Well, that's not
That's why I went to thezebra.com.
something to make me
At
your
Zebra,
problem.
you can easily
Hey,
compare
what about my interest rate? What about my
insurance
bonding
rates from top providers
This is all about
all
my
at
bonding
once. For
And see who actually saves money. If you look at the costs, you can start saving as much as $900 than anybody else. See for yourself what the Zebra is doing. Insurance
Some
comparisons.
other likely story.
Home insurance for free at the zebra.com now. You want to go someplace new? Yeah, see something new. Learn something new. Meet someone new. Hey, Pete, in the house. There's always something new.
CBS Mornings, weekdays.
We experience the weather a whole new way. We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness. We found it.
There's some other.
We share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
How many times? I know the internet much. We love that. That's the thing on the market. That's the problem on the side.
Good morning from Studio 52 here in New York. I am Marie Green.
And I'm Vladimir Tip. Here's a look at the story.
That's why things on the wrong side here.
So, high stakes here in my
I
capital.
think you gotta go to sleep
January
for
6th,
6 hours.
make its case.
He doesn't go to sleep on the other side.
The House passes sweeping gun control, but it stands little chance of passing in the Senate. We're going to tell you what is next for efforts to reach a compromise.
And President Biden's in Los Angeles for the Summit of the Americas. Our editor Keith is there with the big issues on the president's docket.
So it isn't a busy day at Capitol Hill. Within the hour, we're expecting to hear from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. She'll be addressing reporters at her weekly news conference. She is likely to be asked about the gun control bill that was passed in the House last night. And of course, the primetime January 6th committee hearing scheduled for
Must be worse.
Lawmakers are expected to lay out their case for about the events leading up to the voting of the Capitol. Congressional correspondent Scott McFarland is in Washington covering the story for us. Scott.
Hey, Vlad, good morning to you.
Oh.
So many of the images from that day are burned into our minds, but the committee says we haven't seen or learned anything yet. They have many new materials to reveal. The committee begins its work in just a few hours, revealing this unprecedented investigation into a deadly attack at the U.S. Capitol. The Capitol siege is already the largest criminal investigation in American history. 5 people dead, more than 800 defendants charged, weapons, tactical gear, everything. Members of Congress running for their lives, even a gallows and a Confederate flag. The January 6th House Select Committee has spent the last year investigating more than just the attack, but what and who gave rise to it.
President Trump and his team moved willfully through multiple means to attempt to halt the peaceful transfer of power.
The committee has completed more than 1,000 interviews and gathered more than 140,000 records despite a boycott and fierce criticism by nearly all Republicans.
This election was stolen.
The committee says former President Donald Trump was part of a criminal conspiracy to defraud the United States. Key figures in his administration, including former Chief of Staff Mark Meadows and advisor Dan Scavino, Peter Navarro, and Steve Bannon, defied subpoenas and refused to talk. Navarro and Bannon are facing criminal prosecution for contempt of Congress. Prosecutors elected not to charge Meadows and Scavino. All were ignored, but others in the inner circle did speak, including Rudy Giuliani and former